Welcome to CEO Check-In. It is Wednesday again, the Wednesday before Halloween. I still have one child who cares about Halloween. My older one is kind of over it. But I don't know if there's going to be much trick-or-treating this year. In New York, it's already been banned. But the kids are at least doing Halloween parties, and I hope you have some way of celebrating Halloween this year that feels festive and that we can just have a little joy, right? Because there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world. I know we're all on edge waiting for the elections. It's Q4 all of a sudden, so last chance in our businesses to get in those final clients before the end of the year and make sure that we can head into 2021 feeling solid about our businesses. I know that this has been a crazy last few months, and we've had some incredible women join our masterclass that just started, our fall cohort. We have a couple of spots left, so if you're feeling like you don't necessarily have the community and support and strategy that you need to keep your business going in the right direction, please reach out to us and we can set up a call. You can just go to scalewithjulia.com. But today is all about CEO Check-In, and I'm very excited to have with us my guest, Rosemarie Day. I'm going to introduce her in a moment. She's fantastic. I can't wait for you to learn from her. She wrote this book called Marching Towards Coverage. You got my Post-its in there. Marching Towards Coverage, a fantastic book about the need for healthcare reform and why we as women, and I would say specifically as women entrepreneurs, need to get more educated about this. I've learned so much from her and from reading it and from having her in my life, and I'm excited to share Rosemarie with you today. Hi, Maria. Hi, Rosemarie. Thanks for standing by. Just saying hello. Hey, Alyssa. So before we get started, I always do my Go Big tip. And today the Go Big tip is to productize your services. If you have a services company, you might have heard that it's going to be very hard to scale up because most scaling methodologies are really talking about tech companies and product companies, and they don't seem to apply to you. So if you run a services company, a marketing agency, maybe you're a law firm, maybe you have an accounting firm, any kind of consultant, that is a services business, and they are harder to scale. But there is a tried and true way of scaling a services business, which is by productizing your services. And this is something you can learn how to do with a coach, with a community. It's something we teach in the $1 Million Women Masterclass program that Rosemarie Day used to scale up her own business, Day Health Strategies. So go do some homework about that. And if you want help with it, look us up at $1 Million Women. Just go to scalewithjulia.com and set up a call. But the Go Big tip is to productize your services, which really just means treating your services like a product. And it's easier said than done. It requires figuring out which of your services is the one you charge the most for, which is the one your team is best at executing. How can you reorganize your business in order to have this methodology so you can scale up quickly? So we can't get into all of that today, but I wanted to plant that seed. And now it is my great joy to bring on Rosemarie Day. I'm going to introduce you first so I don't embarrass you too much while you're sitting there. So Rosemarie is just a rock star. She has been in our community for several years now and runs Day Health Strategies, which is a successful 7-figure business based out of Boston that does marketing for healthcare firms. And she's extremely passionate about healthcare reform and wrote the book Marching Towards Coverage in order to be part of that national conversation and to really move the needle on women getting more active in taking a role in healthcare policy reform. So get ready to learn some great stuff from Rosemarie. I'm going to bring her on now and let's get going. Rosemarie, let me find you. Here she is. Here we go. Hey, Rosemarie, welcome. Got our internet working for us here. While we're waiting for Rosemarie, I'm going to share that we actually have 28 million Americans right now who are uninsured, which is just a shocking statistic. So that number may have gone up, by the way, because this is from when she wrote the book, and it may even have gone up since the writing. Oh, and by the way, Rosemarie, if you're having trouble getting on, just do a little request to jump in here. And you can also Google it if you need to, for going live on Instagram. Just Google going live on Instagram and you'll see little instructions pop up. But while we're waiting for you, I wanted to also share that women make 80% of the healthcare decisions for our families. And that's not going to shock anyone here, because we know that we make so many healthcare decisions for ourselves, our children, if we have aging parents, right? There's so many people who count on us to look after them. So it's like we're the CMOs, the chief medical officers of our families, right? Just like there's a CMO, a chief marketing officer of a company. And so collectively, we have a lot of power as these CMOs, these chief medical officers. And this is all Rosemarie's language from the book, which I love. She talks about it as the CMOs of our family, the chief medical officers. But then she says that the problem she sees is that we take this as a very individual problem that we have to solve. You know, how do I make sure my family has the best health insurance? How do I find the best policy? How do I get them the best doctors? And we spend very little time, most of us, figuring out how everyone could benefit from policy reforms that would make it so much easier and so much more affordable and accessible for all of us to have good care. And some people may think, well, you know, we had the Affordable Care Act in 2010. Didn't that solve everything, right? We had the Affordable Care Act. Well, it didn't. And Rosemarie's book is in part to help us understand what still needs to be solved. I was shocked in reading her book to find out that it was only in 1965 that Medicare and Medicaid were enacted into law in this country. So before that, there really wasn't even that coverage, which is kind of shocking. I lived in France for 7 years, as many of you know, or if you read my book, Million Dollar Women, I talk about living in Europe. And one of the key things that I took away from that is how much better it is to live in a country that has socialized medicine, that people there don't live in fear of getting, you know, cancer or needing an operation. I also read in Rosemarie's book that one of the leading causes of bankruptcy in America is a medical crisis, right? You read about stories like this every day where a family is living on the edge and then someone gets, you know, in an accident or gets diagnosed with a disease that requires a lot of care and they go bankrupt. So it's just so tragic that on top of dealing with this huge medical, you know, and health challenge, that people are also fighting to pay their bills, building up big debt. It's just devastating. So that was a big, big aha to me. And, you know, what I'd really like to talk to Rosemarie about when she gets on, she's coming, is, here she is, hello, is, you know, how does that impact us? Well, first of all, welcome. So happy to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
How's it going today?
Getting there.
We made it happen. We made it. We're entrepreneurs. We'll figure it out. Right?
Right.
It takes more than that to stop us, especially you. I mean, I'm just such a huge fan of yours. I don't often get to tell you to your face, so I am going to embarrass you a little bit that, you know, we're all about going big at Million Dollar Women. And for so many women in our community, it's really not about the money. I mean, yes, we want to, you know, have a good lifestyle and pay for our family's needs, but it's about having a big impact. And you just embody that so much, Rosemarie, because already you're having a big impact through the marketing work you do with Day Health Strategies, working with healthcare, you know, agencies across the country. But then you decided, well, that's not enough. I'm going to write this book and take on traveling around the country, although I think at this point it's via Zoom, but it started out traveling around the country to educate women about why we should really be a lot more involved in this discussion about healthcare. And I learned so much, and I'm just really excited to share you with our followers today. So thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you. And can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Oh, good.
Awesome. We're all good. And so, you know, I'd love to start with, at the beginning of the book, you shared, you know, a very personal story about how, you know, the need for better healthcare in our country really hit you hard when you're in your own family. You know, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month right now. You shared that you were diagnosed with breast cancer, and so happy that you're all right. And that, you know, your daughter had a health condition, your mother who was in her 80s got sick at the same time. And of course, that could be any of us at any time. And it really got you thinking about, hey, how do we support women, especially, who are often handling healthcare needs of parents and children and their own all at the same time. So how did it become like, I'm going to write a book? Take us to that moment.
So there were several moments, because it takes a lot of, you got to get over a lot of humps to really, as you know, writing a book is not a small undertaking. So you can have the idea, but I needed even more of a push. So certainly the election of Donald Trump with his vow to repeal the Affordable Care Act on day one, was what he used to say, was sort of a negative push at the end of 2016. But then there was the positive of the first Women's March, which I went to with said mother and daughter. Prior to us having all these health issues, we're at this march with all these women. It was phenomenally empowering, peaceful, and everybody was saying, "What's next? What are we? We're marching, but now what?" And of course, the answer was vote. The answer was run for office. And I was already voting. I didn't think I wanted to run for office, but I knew that I knew a lot about healthcare, and that the Affordable Care Act I felt like wasn't well enough understood. So I wanted to explain that. That was kind of at the back of my mind. Then I got hit with the health issues, and when that happens, it's life changing. And so I felt like if I get through this, I need to do something more, because now it's not just about my policy wonk side. It really becomes personal. And as the feminist said, Gloria Steinem et al. In the early 70s, the personal is political.
Yes, so, I was thinking of that this morning when I was thinking about speaking with you. Absolutely. This is such a great case of that.
Right. So it's like, okay, all of these factors, and knowing that a lot of women don't want to get political, it gets messy. It can be, they fear it being confrontational. I mean,
we'd rather just handle our own problems in our own family. And I love that you called that out with this parallel of saying, oh, it's like we're the chief medical officer, because we're just head down, like, how do I solve this for my family? Right. Without realizing that there's so many big systemic problems, or maybe we realize it, but we haven't set aside the time to help fix it.
Right. Exactly. And so I wanted to create something that would be empowering for women. Certainly, being a business owner has been empowering, going on this journey with you. And that's been fulfilling for me. But as you say, I wanted to really go big and think about how could I have some impact at this more systemic level. And, I'm just one person. But I just felt called to it because of the huge importance of this. And anybody who you hear their story about healthcare, and all of us who have pre-existing conditions, which is over 100 million Americans, we all need to feel secure about healthcare.
Do you think COVID will count as a pre-existing condition?
It absolutely will.
Oh, it will. Well, that greater reason, right?
Is insidious. The people who are researching it are still learning all kinds of crazy things about it. We've not, even when we get a vaccine, we're not going to see the end of this because of its long tail. So,
all the more reason. There was plenty of reason before, right?
Exactly. And so when you think about that, and then you compare that, as you said, you lived in Europe. Well, every other developed country in Europe and beyond has made healthcare a right. They insure everybody, maybe not with like deluxe care, but they cover everybody at least with the basics, and usually with catastrophic as well.
And you don't have families going bankrupt because one member of the family got sick, right? It's just so cruel.
It's totally cruel. And especially again, coming back to the pandemic, where so many people are losing jobs, and half the country relies on their job to get their health insurance. And so if you lose that job, you are out of luck. Fortunately, we do have the coverage from the Affordable Care Act, but politically that's in jeopardy again.
It is. And even if we do get who we want in office, everything will not be solved. So help us understand that for someone who hasn't been following as closely as you have, who says, hey, we got the Affordable Care Act. Hooray, victory, move on. What still needs fixing?
So I have a chapter called The ACA Only Got Us Part Way, and that's because it did not make the healthcare affordable enough. So there are people who still struggle to pay for their healthcare. And so we need to make the subsidies more generous. As in my home state of Massachusetts, we were able to do back when I worked on the prototype of the ACA, and our state was able to get to 2% uninsured. And that was with a more generous subsidy package. Even though we're an expensive state, people could get the insurance coverage.
Well, that's a better number, right? Because that 28 million I shared earlier, is that still about how many are uninsured in America? It must have, with the recession and the pandemic.
Right. It's well over 30 million. They haven't gotten official count, but it's well over 30 and continuing to grow. So it's a huge.
That's terrible. So as women entrepreneurs, I mean, of course we care about this as women and as the primary caretakers still. We have to say in our families, we tend to be the primary caretakers. And then they talk about this sandwich generation, right, that you and I are in, where it's like you might have aging parents and you're
Yep.
taking care of children, right? And then your own health issues or needs. So
Yep.
what should we be paying attention to right now as women and as women entrepreneurs?
So, I mean, as you well know, a barrier to for women starting their businesses isn't just about whether they can raise some funds or go without an income for a bit. A huge one is whether they'll have health insurance coverage. And a lot of women will rely on a spouse to have that coverage, at least to get their business going.
Or maybe they've still got Cobra from the job they left,
Or
right?
maybe
But then
they
that
do.
runs out.
But not everybody has that luxury, so it truly is a barrier for a lot of women, and so that's really key. And again, in other countries, that's not even an issue. That wouldn't keep you from starting a business because you would just have your health coverage regardless. It also keeps people locked into jobs they're not happy in. Maybe they don't want to start up a company, but they want to be able to go work for a startup. So those people that you might be wanting to attract to your business who may need to come in initially as independent contractors because your business can't afford to pay healthcare coverage yet. That ought to be taken care of. It really should be a right. So we have to pay attention to that and make this part of our cultural conversation that our expectation for the country we're living in is to have a more humane country. And the pandemic just shines such a big light on that. One of the things that puts the ACA at risk right now, not only is if Donald Trump stays in office and continues to try to repeal it, but is that this case is going before the Supreme Court the week after the election. And as we know, the Supreme Court.
And we just got that new judge. Yep.
We don't know exactly what she'll do, but we know she leans. Thank you, RBG. She leans conservative, and the last time the Supreme Court weighed in on the Affordable Care Act, it was a 5-4 decision with Justice Roberts being the tipping vote. Now people are wondering, can he do that again? And there's no.
It's going to be very close. So how can we be impactful now? This is a perfect example, right? Like what can we do as women and as women entrepreneurs?
So right now it's all about the election coming up, and it's not only about the president's seat, but it's also about what the makeup of the Senate is, because Mitch McConnell seems to have made it a point, rather than working in a bipartisan fashion. And believe me, I grew up in a bipartisan house. I believe in bipartisanship, but we're just not seeing that right now. And so the Senate isn't going to would effectively block, even if Biden-Harris win, the Senate will block stuff if McConnell's still in charge. So I'm encouraging women, and I just sat up late last night and donated to some Senate campaigns in other states that give us the chance to flip the Senate so McConnell's no longer in charge.
That is so important. Thank you for bringing that up, because what we know about women entrepreneurs is that we're very busy, right? We really care.
Right.
We became entrepreneurs because we have different ideas and we want to chart our own course.
Yep.
So I think that there are many of us who want to do more, but just aren't sure where to plug in. So maybe you could just tell us 3 things that we could be doing at this critical juncture, right? The election is in less than 10 days to really make a difference.
So I encourage women to really give politically and to make their vote count as a healthcare voter. And so, make sure you know who you're voting for and that they're going to further the goals of Affordable Care Act and truly protect people with pre-existing conditions. So that's got to inform your vote. That's one thing. And women give fewer of the political donations. Men give 2/3 of them. Women, we've got to, power. Money matters.
Money is power. Money is freedom, and money is power. Yes.
And women who run for office, of course, they get donations from men, but they do need support from women. And so we need to step up and do that. So those are really the first 2 things I would say.
And I would say they should read your book. Seriously. Read Emerging Towards Coverage. No, because you have spent years researching this and then brought it to us in a way that is digestible, understandable. It can get very wonky. It can get very policy wonky, I have to say, right? Because I'm not a Washington, D.C. person. You live and breathe in this world, but you've made it all very, very accessible. So if women are thinking it's true, I do need to get more educated. This is a great, great place to start.
I appreciate that. And what I wanted to do was to, with the book, is inform and inspire. So on the inform part, as we think about the holidays coming up, and admittedly, it's not going to be probably our typical Thanksgiving table, but
Not so much. My mom's attending via Zoom. I don't know about your parents.
right. So, but nonetheless, there's still this kind of conversation that can happen about what's going on in the country.
Yes.
And, as I worked on the book, I found that a lot of women will just sort of back down because they'll think, oh, I can't talk about this topic. Or if that uncle is loud and just says, we can't afford that in this country. I wanted to arm women with some good key facts about why, yes, indeed, we can inform this so that we can start changing the conversation at the table, because it's that kind of changing at heart's level, telling the stories, being courageous like that.
I couldn't agree more. And making it personal, right? I think sometimes men don't really understand how deeply this impacts us as women, because we interact with the healthcare system so much more than they do. That was something else I got out of your book, right? That we don't think about it in those terms, but having a baby, all those, doctor's visits, right? And then all the follow-ups, and then taking care of everybody else's health. We're constantly in and out of the healthcare system, where I don't know about you, but I've had boyfriends who don't go to the doctor for 5 years, right? And it's like, well, I don't have that luxury, right? I'm taking care of all these people, besides which, we have to do a lot of preventive care. Men do too, but I think we have to do a little more.
We do.
Right? Mammograms, all the endoscopy, all that stuff.
And let's not forget, this is one of my favorite, I got this from a woman when I was speaking on a panel as I was finishing up my book. I'm like, oh, I'm going to put this in the book. But she said,
what was it?
We may only be 50% of the population, but we are responsible for 100% of the future population.
Oh, wow. That is very true. That's a good point. Yes. I mean, the men, those are great points. I am going to read one little paragraph. I know I keep making you blush. You probably hate this, but I'm going to read from your book. You're like the most humble person I know, but just deal with it a minute. So here we go. So Rosemarie writes, I just want to give you a sense of the tone of the book, because it's so good. Such a great read. She says, this is where she's talking about how women are the chief medical officers, but why aren't we doing more? So she says, so instead of sharing knowledge and resources and organizing to influence policy decisions, women end up struggling alone against a system that's too big and too broken to be affected by their individual concerns. If we were able to harness the power of tens of millions of household CMOs collectively in the political and business arenas, that's you women, we could expand and improve healthcare access, creating a better world for ourselves, our families, and our nation. I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I know this was, years of work and a lot of putting aside family and business, and your amazing team, thank God, kept Day Health Strategies going. But this is a really big contribution. I want to make sure every woman gets a copy. But tell us a little more about what's happening next for you. How are you getting the book out there? I know you have, such big goals of sharing this wisdom. How are you getting it out there?
Well, I did the pandemic pivot thanks to your help and guidance about doing things like this, going live on Instagram, or I'm doing.
You did lots of Zooms, I know, right?
Lots of Zoom book talks, and that's the new normal. And it means I actually can be in a lot more places, because physically it'd be hard to be traveling as much. I'm doing a lot of radio interviews on regional radio in purple states, and that has real reach. People are paying attention, so. That's how it's going right now. And
I believe you have a partnership, or you were talking about a partnership, so that women who read the book maybe could have a next step. Is there like a next thing they can do?
Oh, well, yes, I have a website on the author side. It's rosemarieday.com. And that's a place where you can take a quick quiz to see how comfortable you are with activism. And then it helps point you toward what you could do.
That's what I was thinking of.
Which, there's a continuum, and not everyone is going to run for office, obviously, but there's so many things you could do, even if you only have 5 minutes. And so I give you those resources.
That's great. That's a fantastic resource, because we know women entrepreneurs are busy, but they are also, sometimes you got to ask a busy person to get something done, right? If you ask a woman entrepreneur to get something done, she will make it happen. So I have faith that a lot of our viewers are going to be going to rosemarieday.com and figuring out how we can collectively really move the needle for healthcare, right? Because that's what we're doing to try to close the gender wage gap, the gender economic gap in $1 million women, not just wages, but general wealth, right? Because as women entrepreneurs, we're not counting on other people to pay us a wage. but we're way behind on, earnings in terms of where men are. What connection do you see between those two, Rosemary?
Huge. In fact, I would recommend, I just saw a documentary that came out last night on PBS called Not Done, that Gloria Steinem had been promoting on Instagram, but it was incredibly intersectional, and it really, illustrated like a lot of the things that motivated my book, but it really goes into the Me Too movement and just how discouraged a lot of women were when Hillary Clinton lost, and how it felt like such a setback to the women's agenda, and it woke a lot of people up. And so it was a really good, a really good
Not Done is what it's called.
Not Done.
Oh, I'm excited to see that. Yes, I'll never forget on the day that Hillary Clinton lost, I had taken my son to lunch so we could celebrate the first woman president. I always feel like I personally jinxed it. I blew it for Hillary.
Right. Well, you didn't. I mean, a lot of us had champagne in the fridge ready to go. I mean, yeah.
It was just devastating. So yeah, what more can we do? And that's great that women are using this as a wake-up call. We know they are. We see it. And then look, the pandemic is also a wake-up call because we have been reading, I've been reading, I'm sure you have too, about the huge setback this has been for women in the workplace, that, a lot of women are not able to carry on their jobs and do homeschooling. Layoffs have disproportionately affected women. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing there.
Well, yes, women have had to take a lot of women, and this is women of means who can take a step back because they've got a spouse who can support them. But this is not where women had been wanting to go. And I know several women in this category, and they're very frustrated because it does feel like a step back professionally, and they hope that they don't lose too much ground, once we get to the other side of this. So.
And then talking about women who don't have the luxury of doing that, right? Then there are women who are working these kind of triple days and just things have become so hard.
Issues, the stress from that. And, I would just say that I think that, and this was really brought forward in this Not Done documentary too, how intersectional this is, and how many, I think, white women have woken up to what a lot of women of color have already been saying and fighting for. And the fact that we have come together in some unprecedented ways, that I hope will be sustained, because even if Biden and Harris are elected, you can't get these agendas moved overnight.
Yes, this is long-term work. I mean, you've been involved in this for a decade or more than that, 2 decades. Yeah.
So we have to stick with it. It is really a marathon, but again, if enough people just do a little bit and change the conversation, that's powerful, and we can be that powerful.
Thank you for ending us on that high note, because there is so much that we're seeing right now that is discouraging, and especially all the layoffs of women, that a lot of women are losing their jobs. We talked about women who decided to stay home to do caretaking, but I do want to mention, and especially in terms of intersectionality, right? Black women losing their jobs, women who are in a very fragile socioeconomic status losing their jobs, and that's just really going to be a big setback for us as women. So I think we have to come together and figure out what are the things we can do to drive things forward. And I think this is one of the most important places where we can have a big impact, is really advocating for healthcare reform that impacts all of us, disproportionately. So thank you for leading the charge on that. Where can people find you if they want to learn more? You mentioned the rosemarieday.com website. Is there a social media you like better than any others?
I do have an author Instagram site, so I do enjoy Instagram and putting photos up. And I'm also on Twitter. That's where I do more of my political messaging. And then if you come to my website, I do blog, and I'm hoping to get out a blog about Breast Cancer Awareness Month before the month's over. And I keep current with all the things. So if you like the voice that I'm sharing, it's there in several venues.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so you can follow Rosemarie Day and all the impact she's having in bringing about healthcare reform and galvanizing more women just like us to get involved in this super important issue, especially now. So thank you, Rosemarie. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye. Thanks. I always love seeing Rosemarie, and she came to 2 of our $1 Million Women's Summits, so we got to have her there with us in person. So many of you watching may remember her. She had a bright red jacket on that they always stood out in the pictures, and she's just doing so much good. So let's remember that great quote by William James that says, "Act as if what you do makes a difference. It does." And Rosemarie's making a huge difference, but each of us can make a huge difference too. So thank you for being with me today and with Rosemarie Day on CEO Check-In. I will see you next week, same time, same place. And if you're watching at home at 11 o'clock at night or whatever, take good care and remember to vote. Stay brave and go big. Bye.